I spent years doing minimal steps, minimal cardio, and really pushing food in my off seasons because I really just thought I need to grow. I always had trouble putting on weight. I was never someone who really put on scale weight very easily. So I always followed the age-old eat big to get big, right? I pushed up to 275 pounds in my biggest off season just to lose almost 50 of it to get on stage. Really trying to force the scale to move is not going to be the answer to the most off-season gains that you can make, or any growth phase in general if you're not a seasoned competitor. Maybe you don't compete, you just want to put on maximum amount of muscle, which a lot of guys are doing now. And the best way to do that is not by chasing scale weight. There is no reason you should be in a position where you need to lose 50 pounds to get on stage. That is just ridiculous. Somewhere around the 10% above your predicted stage weight is perfectly fine to hang around at in an off season. But this ultimately is why bulks just stop working for so many people, and potentially why yours has as well. So how should you actually structure this so you're able to maximize your results and actually put on the muscle you're aiming for? You see, the size of your surplus is not the thing that's going to determine how well you grow. Yes, I do believe you should be in a slight surplus and accumulating fat slowly over time, over some timed growth phase, at which point you look at resensitizing, getting leaner, pulling down and priming for either another growth phase or a prep. Yes, I know this is traditional bulking and cutting, but I don't think it should be very large swings either. And this looks like either a holding phase, sometimes not necessarily a hard cut. Things might be a little bit different if you're natural. I typically would like to push that a little bit further. However, with enhanced competitors, when you're able to still progress very easily in a deficit, right up honestly until the point where you're really, really lean, it's very beneficial to do these resensitize and allow for another very productive growth phase, set up a nice long runway so that you're able to grow and put on as much muscle as possible over that period. Where your surplus is going to go and the changes you need to make depends on 4 things. And this is exactly what they are. And remember, none of these metrics are the be all end all by themselves. It is about using all of these tools put together to make the best decision for the athlete so that you're able to make the best decisions for yourself and make sure you get huge too. Because we all just want to get jacked, man. And we all are gonna make it. First things first, scale weight. I mentioned this already. It doesn't need to be 50 pounds heavier than what your predicted stage weight would be. Or if you're not a competitor, the predicted or guesstimate weight that you would look your best. And chances are, if you're not experienced, you may not have a good idea of how light you may actually be to look the way that you want to look. But you can always ask for advice or work with a coach. Even if not, you're gonna have a pretty good guess. And when you get there, if you wanna be leaner, just keep going. In your growth phase, you want to be going for 0 to 2 to 0.5% on average rate of gain per week of body weight. This is personally what I like to aim for with a lot of my athletes. However, there is a little bit of a caveat to this. It is not a rule, okay? It is not a hard and fast rule. It is a percentage. So the slight problem I do have with this is as people get heavier, the percentage increase or the absolute increase based on that percentage will actually go up alongside that as well. Meaning the more weight they put on, the more weight they're expected to gain, which is why it's not a hard and fast rule. It's really good to use when we're looking at relative amounts gained between 2 separate people. If we have person A who's 200 pounds and they're putting on 0.2% per week, and we have person B who is 250 pounds putting on 0.2 per week, their rate of gain is the same. But when we specifically look at a person in themselves, as they're going through a growth phase, that percentage now becomes less and less important. So sometimes I like to just make sure we're looking at amount of absolute gained each week as well. And it's very easy to get disheartened by this with a lot of people. Might look at the scale and say, I'm only putting on 0.3 kilos per week, or only 300 grams a week, 200 grams a week. However, on average, if we are achieving that every single week, that is a massive gain over the course of the year. With 50 weeks in a year, if we're putting on 0.2, that is 10 kilos of muscle. That is a lot and pretty unrealistic of actual muscle that we would be putting on, right? So we can already establish that 0.2 would be too fast. if we are accumulating pure muscle. The second thing you need to be looking out for is your visuals. This is the most important metric we have, our visuals. We're in a visual sport. If you even want to call it a sport, it is visual, okay? We are not just looking at performance. Now, I'll get to that in a second, but visuals are extremely important for the physique competitor because that is what we're basing everything off. If your visuals are improving week to week, or not necessarily week to week, obviously that's very hard to see, but over the course of months, we are seeing on average visuals improve. That is a very, very good sign. So softening will happen across an entire phase. Obviously this is expected. We expect with some small fat accumulation and a little bit of water to come with that as well. We will notice a physique get softer from beginning to end, obviously, but we shouldn't be able to notice this week to week. If we are noticeably losing condition or separation week to week, there's a likely chance the rate of gain is too high. And again, we pair this with our scale weight. So we should be seeing our condition actually look like it's staying the same week to week. And then when we look back, which we want to do on somewhat of a regular basis still, that's when we see some softening happening, which is perfectly okay. Third thing we need to be looking at is gym performance. Is our gym performance actually going up? We should absolutely be seeing this, especially if the athlete is enhanced. We should be seeing consistent progressions across a phase and across our mesocycles, our training blocks within a certain phase. We should be seeing those numbers go up over time, absolutely. If not, that could be another issue that we need to address, perhaps on the recovery standpoint. Perhaps there's too much volume, perhaps they're under recovering from a lifestyle perspective. That is a totally different diagnostic that we need to be making. But specifically when we're looking at rate of gain here, we need to be seeing those numbers go up. If they're not, and we're seeing the scale weight go up, there's likely a chance we're just gaining fat and it's not contributing to extra muscle. Remember, extra muscle will move weight. More muscle will produce more force and therefore you will be stronger. So when we see that gym performance go up, the adaptation has already occurred. We have already grown more muscle, or sometimes improve things like skill acquisition or even neural adaptation when it comes to the beginning of a phase. This is normal, so we can likely see large jumps in our training performance at either the start of a mesocycle or potentially adding in a new movement. And we don't want to get that confused with just consistent progression over time, which is why it's best to stick to the same exercises, especially across at least one mesocycle, so we're able to accurately track those progressions. Number 4, this is potentially the most important and what I see everyone miss out on. So acting early. Now you might be seeing a 1 to 1.5% increase on the scale and the visuals are holding okay. This might seem great, but it is not always. Maintaining this rate of progress or rate of gain is very likely going to mean that out of nowhere, you're going to be very soft one day. You're going to look like things are going amazing. You'll be 4 weeks in, progress is flying, your scale weight is skyrocketing, and you look like you're maintaining condition until you wake up all of a sudden and then you're just fat. This happens all the time post-show. I see this amongst so many competitors because they're so lean to begin with. These body fat accumulations are small and they still have great amount of separation and they're leaner than what they were last off season, so it still looks like they're at a great spot. But all it's doing is restricting the amount of time you can actually grow for. If the rate of gain is staying consistent around 1 to 1.5% per week, I promise you the softness is coming and you're gonna have to put a stop to the growth phase. It just hasn't quite shown yet. There are some slight exceptions to big jumps, obviously. So at the start of a growth phase, this can happen and be completely okay, especially if it's with the introduction of PEDs as well. A lot of the times, remember, people are starting a growth phase after something like I said, a post-show rebound, or even a holding phase where maybe they haven't had PEDs in. So introducing some new PEDs or deploying certain compounds could create a large jump, especially if it's something like growth hormone. Remember, that's gonna hold a substantial amount of water for a lot of people, and we're gonna see some pretty large scale weight jumps that week. But if you are truly staying in a small few hundred calorie surplus, there's no way you're gonna pack on kilos and kilos of body fat, and there's a likely chance it is just water at the start of this phase. The key here is just don't panic, don't look at a rate of gain one time and think this is too fast, I need to pull it down. Again, we have a predicted surplus, and if we're not in a huge surplus, it's not going to be a problem. Now, on top of those 4 diagnostics that we look at, there's also 4 reasons that we need to be maintaining our steps, cardio, things like this in the off season. Number 1 would be to remain with a high energy flux or caloric flux. This essentially is just a term, or I believe it is still a concept, around how much energy we burn and eat in a day. And people who typically burn more and eat more have better health outcomes than people who burn less and eat less. A lower caloric flux is likely going to lead to lower insulin sensitivity over time, over the course of this phase. And again, that is a very important part of our nutrient partitioning that we're trying to get out of this phase. You see, maintaining a good insulin sensitivity is going to mean our body is going to utilize glucose better, push the carbohydrates and nutrients that we're eating into the muscle cell and available for use instead of storing as fat as quickly. Appetite regulation is something that can also get worse as we continue with a low energy flux. Keeping higher cardio and higher steps throughout the day is going to allow your appetite to be a little bit higher, which we know is important when you have to eat a lot of food in these surpluses. Reason number 2, you've probably heard this a lot by this point, but hypertrophy is signaling dependent, not calorie dependent. Meaning calories do not grow muscle. Food in general does not grow muscle. What it does is promote the anabolic environment and facilitate the best anabolic environment possible to grow and maximize muscle growth based on the training stimulus that we provide. But the only thing that is actually driving this muscle growth is the stimulus that we're providing from training. Hence why our gym performance is such an important tool to look at. And if our lifts are not moving up, chances are it's not just more food that's going to fix it. Reason number 3, the thing is getting fatter makes it easier to get fatter. So as we get fatter, as we accumulate more body fat, and I mentioned before the insulin sensitivity gets worse, this is going to drive more body fat because we are storing more as body fat. And it then becomes easier and easier to gain weight. When I was at my heaviest at 275, I was seeing increases so much quicker. And number 4, arguably the most important reason here is the recovery and health environment. The markers that we need to be looking at and tracking specifically would be our resting heart rate, blood pressure, and HRV if possible as well. These will all absolutely get worse with higher body fat percentages and also just higher body weight in general. Plus, we know from a plethora of evidence by this point that more activity, more cardio will improve these cardiac markers. Now, even if you're not concerned about your heart health over time, which you definitely should be, better health is going to lead to a more efficient body and therefore better gains. This is something people struggle to grasp in the industry at the moment, that everyone is just super unhealthy. Do you really think the best way to grow is to have a very unhealthy environment in your body? People think you just have to blast PEDs and eat a lot of food and then that's the answer. But realistically, if that is making your health worse, your body is just going to fight against you. And it's going to make this whole process so much slower. The athletes that I've really taken from decent to exceptional have been because the first thing we did was fix health markers. The better and stronger that your heart is, most likely the better parasympathetic tone you'll have. Now, this is your part of your nervous system, and this is our rest and digest nervous system. This is the opposite from our fight or flight, which is when we have a whole lot of adrenaline released. When we are in this state of constant adrenaline, we are not growing, we are not recovering, we are not sleeping well either. All of this is going to stack and compound and really reduce your gains. So here's what you can look out for. If your scale is moving up slowly and your gym numbers are moving up, visuals are holding, excellent. You are likely doing everything that you need to in this growth phase. If you're in a position where your scale is moving up, gym numbers aren't moving up, and your look is getting softer, chances are over the weeks your surplus has been too high. If you're noticing everything is quite stagnant, weight is about the same, gym performance isn't really moving, then there is a chance that recovery is the problem here, and you may need to address the rest of the programming to figure out what's going wrong.